Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. Today I've got a nice fun happy birthday card for you. I'm going to be using the Lifestyle Crafts We Are Memory Keepers Shape and Tape. And this is basically washi tape in sheets. I'm going to be using the Simon Says Stamp Happy Birthday die. I've used that so many times before. I've got this new die from Technique Tuesday called Straight Talk Birthday. And then finally, my new favorite product is this Little Bee Nested Hearts. And as you can see, it's got this great storage container. It's got a magnetic closure that you barely touch it and it closes and keeps your dies very stable in there. And then what I love about it the most is that you have straight hearts and stitched hearts that you can do. So that's just a straight heart right here on the outside. And the stitching die is actually its own die, so it just does stitching, and it's a cross stitch, which is sweet. And you can do it on the inside, so I can die cut the outside with the stitching on the inside, or I can have the stitching on the outside. And I have 4 different sets of these that I can do. And the inside one, by the way, the very smallest one, doesn't have an inside die, just an outside die. But there's so many different options with this. There are 11 dies that come with this set, and I thought it was really worth the money. So anyway, I'm going to be using this second heart set in. You can see I'm having trouble getting it out because this magnetic is so strong. But anyway, just love this new set. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch Neenah Solar White cardstock. I'm going to mark the center going horizontally, and then I'll take my T-square and draw a straight line across. And then I'll measure the middle again from the other side and draw a straight line across. So basically I've divided this into 4 equal quadrants. And that's so that I can line my heart up. So I'm going to take my magnetic platform and I'll take the outside, this is just the plain die cut, and I'll line up the top and the bottom of the heart so it's really easy to make sure I get it in the center. And then I'll lay my stitching on the inside. I'm going to use my paper piercer just to kind of nudge it back and forth until I get it exactly centered inside that heart die. And then I'll put my other acrylic plate on there and run it through my Sizzix. So when I take it apart here, you'll see that the outside heart cut a hole in the paper, and then the inside die was just the stitching, and I chose to put the stitching on the inside. And so when I peel it off, you'll see that it has this really nice cross stitch all the way around. All right, now I'm going to erase the pencil marks that I made on the outside panel. And then I'm going to take the heart and I'm going to measure about 1/4 inch down. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to need it, but I figured 1/4 inch is going to give me enough to kind of get it aligned. So then I'll erase all the other pencil marks except for the 1/4 inch down that I made from that center mark. And I'm going to lay my birthday die right across so that it fits perfectly from side to side on this stitched heart. And once I get it all lined up, I'll take my surgical tape and I'll tape it into place to make sure it does not move, because I want to make sure, even though I've got my magnetic platform, that it doesn't go anywhere. So you'll see once I cut this, I can remove the top portion, and this die does not cut the bottom portion of the happy birthday, so it leaves it attached to the bottom part of the die. And so it's a really nice die. It popped right out with my fingers. I didn't need to poke it or anything. All right, so now I'm going to work on the card base, and I'm going to lay down my card base so I just have the top showing. And then I'm going to take that panel that I cut the heart out of and I'll place it on top so that I can align another stitch. So I'm going to put this right on the inside like I did earlier, but now I'm just going to cut the stitching on my card base. So I'll lift that panel up and I'll put it, hold it into place with this surgical tape, and then I'll run it through the Sizzix. And this is going to cut just the stitching. So when I take this off, you'll see that I'll have stitching and it'll show on the inside of the card as well as the outside of the card, which I thought was pretty cool. So when somebody opens it up, they'll see the stitching on the inside. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some inking up here. So I'm going to mark the bottom of my birthday word so I know how far down I'm going to need to ink up. Now I'm taking some tape and I'm going to kind of protect the edges, because you know sometimes when you're doing an ink applicator you actually color the edges of your card, and I didn't want my edges to be colored, so I'm just going to protect them with some tape. I'm going to start off with some Squeeze Lemonade Distress ink in an ink applicator, and I usually start off with really light pressure and I then get heavier and heavier as more ink gets on the paper. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to do the top third between where my birthday word is and the top of my heart. Now remember, this is the card base with just the stitching on it. So once I'm done with my squeezed lemonade, I'm going to take my picked raspberry and I'm going to start from the bottom up. So I'm going to start where I made those pencil marks where my birthday word was. I'm going to move up toward this squeezed lemonade. So I'm not going to be too careful about the bottom of the heart because it's not going to show, but I am going to use, light pressure as usual, and I'm going to get it darker and darker as I move along here. But I'm going to leave a wide gap between these two colors because I'm going to be applying the ripe persimmon color, which is kind of an orangey color. So hopefully they're all going to be blending together. All right, so here I come in with the ripe persimmon, and this is a little bit difficult to take two colors and blend them from one side to the other when there's a gap in the middle. And what I'm doing here is I'm really applying light pressure. So I'm going to take my time with this because I don't want any rectangular marks. And normally I would take my applicator and kind of slide it in little circles from off my paper onto my paper. And you can't do this because you've got pink on one side and yellow on the other side. So it's not going to be perfect, but I just wanted to make it look like it was blended. So I applied my ripe persimmon, and then you'll see that I'm going back in here with a little bit of squeezed lemonade, and then I'm going to go back in with the ripe persimmon. And so I'm just going to kind of keep doing this until I get it blended the way I want to. And by the way, I did try the circular applicators, and I find that I have just as much trouble getting the ink blocks, except they're circles, as with the rectangular blocks. And I also noticed that the pads were a little bit different on the circles. They weren't as soft as the rectangles. Anyway, so okay, I've got my picked raspberry a little bit more on the bottom so that there's more pink, and then I was happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and take off my tape. So now you see what I mean about not getting the ink on the sides. And I'm going to work on this birthday portion of the heart. I'm going to use this hand-drawn background. I've used this background so many times. It really is a nice versatile stamp. I'm going to cover up the birthday because I don't want hearts on the birthday. And I put some Versamark on there, and I'm going to get it on the front here. And I find that sometimes with white space, it's really hard to keep the white space. You want to do something with it. And if you feel like you have to do something with it, it's good to do clear embossing on it because it adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of shine, but it doesn't distract at all from your focal point. So you can always use that as an option. Okay, so next I'm going to work on my happy from the happy birthday. I'm going to cut this from some sturdy cardstock because it's a really thin word. I really love this die, but I use some Stampin' Up! Black cardstock because it's really sturdy cardstock. Now I've got all my pieces. I'm going to take this Shape and Tape, and what I've done is cut it into 1/4 inch strips. And when I apply it in the strips, I like to apply it a little bit at a time. So I'm not going to take the release tape off the whole entire strip because when you do that, it curls up and it's a little harder to get on. And actually, this stuff is really forgiving. It can curl up into a ball and get all tangled, and you can still work with it and undo it. So I like to just do it a little bit at a time. All right, then what I'm going to do, I want these two dies cuts to be inlaid. So I'm going to place them together, turn them upside down, and of course I'm going to use my surgical tape here because I sort of am doing surgery. I'm going to make sure that these are right up against each other. Now I could go ahead and adhere both of them separately to my card base, but I wanted to make sure there was no gap, and with tape runner sometimes when you stick it and you try to get it back up, it doesn't work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere these together so they're right up against each other before I even put it on my card base. And this surgical tape is so thin that it doesn't have any bulk whatsoever. All right, somebody asked me about how I use my ATG gun. And so I'm going to show you here. First I pull the trigger, and then I pull the tape toward me, and then I roll it toward me. So again, put it down, put the trigger down, and then roll it toward me pretty evenly, and then let go of the trigger and then pull toward me. And one more time here, roll it and then kind of toward me. You can kind of roll it forward a little bit, and that might help too. Okay, now I'm just going to place it on my card base, and then I'll take my happy sentiment, and I'm going to use a 2A glue pen, which is my favorite way to put on sentiments. I just dab it, dot it really on the back, all the way across the whole thing. And the 2A glue pen is really forgiving in that it allows you some time to figure out where you want your sentiment to be. And then once you figure it out, you just put pressure on it, and it really sticks well. So I put the P's behind the birthday and then the Y in front of the birthday, just to do something a little bit different. Now when I lifted it up to look at it, I realized that my heart was not centered on the stitching. So as usual, I pulled my panel off, which I think I do in pretty much every video, is pull my final panel off and put it back on. So luckily the ATG is pretty is forgiving when it comes to that. Now the top of my heart kind of came up a little bit, so I just stuck a little bit of my 2A glue pen behind there and just pressed down, and it stuck just fine. So you can see the stitching on the inside. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, so that's the card for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.